That's right, people. For the first time in a long time, I am here to review an episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Right after it happens. Or I watch it. I don't know when the subs go live for this show. But I'm here to talk about episode 77. Why? Because there's actually something worth talking about. And if next week gives me something worth talking about, I will talk about it. That's all I ask of these shows. Just give me enough to cover like 10 minutes worth of discussion. That's all I ask of you, Yu-Gi-Oh! That's all I ask, and this week they delivered. I really liked what was put in front of me. I thought everything about this episode worked. The characters worked. As I keep saying with the show, is it the best Yu-Gi-Oh! We've ever gotten? No, but I think this was a really effective way to use what's been put in front of us. So without further ado, let us get right into it, right where this episode starts. And this episode begins on a very uniquely weird note with the image of what I can only describe as Otis creating galaxies, reshaping galaxies, making galaxies into people. I don't quite know what's going on in that scene, but that's kind of why I like it. This episode is all about making everything going on beyond our characters feel really weird. Like, what can Otis do? What can Earth Dammers do? What can Kawaii ultimately do? It kind of doesn't matter, but just the images we get of it are kind of enough to leave an impression. We are dealing with forces kind of beyond regular logic and understanding, and seeing that these are forces that have the ability to rework the universe to whatever they want could potentially lead to some very interesting, weird shit as we move on forward with the rest of the arc, and I am here for that. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is at its best when it's being weird and abstract, and if we want to go on to the next chunk of episodes with that being the focus, I'm in. I really enjoyed this, and you know what? I think the way they handled that scene really sets up what happens later in the episode with Kawaii. Just the way he asks, do you care about us, or do you care about rush duels more? And the idea that Otis does not seem to really have an answer for him as he crafts Udius in front of him, I think kind of really gives you an idea what's going on with this guy. This guy continues the theme set up from YGO of nihilism. This is a guy who does not believe that anything is important, that the universe has showed him there is no point to anything, and there is no reason to value anything or care about anything, so just do whatever screwed up thing helps quell your anger. In Zuijo's case, it was a lot of destruction. In this guy's case, it's the idea of inflicting to others what he feels was inflicted to him. And I think showing the idea of basically being rejected by his father figure, I think is a really effective way to show that. So then we move on to the actual episode. Love there was no OP in this. Like, I don't know if they're taking a lesson from Shadow vs. Flame, which loves just throwing the OP away so that way you can have more episode content, but more of that, please. But yeah, so we go on to the duel between Yuhi and Kawaii. Well, first it's, I'm getting this right, first it's him versus Udius. And we have the idea in place that because of Udius's steadfast personality, he's too stupid to realize he is being manipulated by Kawaii. What happens next, I actually quite enjoy. I like the idea that what it turns out is that Udius had, at least at some point, pieced together what was going on, and he did believe that Kawaii was trying to manipulate and control him, but believed that the only way to put himself in a position where he could get out of it was if he put total faith in his friends and the belief that they could help him in trying to get out of this. This goes directly against what Kawaii believes. I hope I'm getting this name right. It's not a real word, people. This goes against exactly what the villain wants. The villain wants to reinforce his idea of not being able to believe in anyone or not being able to feel anything. Again, nihilism. But here, Udius proves that by having faith and believing in the strength of others, he was able to succeed. It is only by putting total faith that Yuhi can push the duel to where it needs to be, and also to win the duel, so that way the cards of darkness don't become popular and present even more trouble. And Yeah, they did it quite effectively. I like seeing Yuhi's big fusion monster. I like we saw hand fusion. I like it wasn't everything was on the field. Here comes this big ridiculous boss monster just here to take out another big ridiculous monster. Even though I really don't like Trans Am whatchamacallit because he hasn't really done anything, so I hate how they just shove like weird forms for him in random episodes like this. But yeah, I like this whole sort of thing. And I think Yuhi is used very effectively. Same with Zuijo, same with Phaser. I think this idea that they're all kind of like coming together and showing that they've learned something from Udius as he has learned from them, I think is an effective use of just the characters in general. But then we move on to what is the big sort of thing, and that is Udius flying around Quietel's soul mind, I don't quite know, which again makes it kind of fun. But he then finds Quietel's memories where he sees what happened to Otis, and that is that Otis was just gonna leave. He was going to leave Quietel and everything he created, but right before he could, it looked like Quietel had a negative reaction, created a tiny galaxy, and absorbed Otis. This is the weird shit you'd never think you would see, except when Yu-Gi-Oh likes to do this kind of stuff. But I kind of like the idea. It's almost sort of made to look like in that scene. And again, we'll have to see where it goes when Otis inevitably comes back. But it kind of gives you the impression that Quietel wasn't necessarily in control of what he was doing in that moment. He doesn't seem angry or sad. He looks like he's in pain, like he's not in control of what he's doing as he sucks Otis up. I also think it's interesting, Otis's reaction isn't anger either. It's like, I didn't consider your feelings. And again, that leaves you on sort of this morally ambiguous note. Otis isn't being a bad person in that scene. He is shown to be sympathetic. Quietel is not doing this out of sadistic pleasure. He's doing it because he doesn't want to lose his father figure. And then seeing the ship go away, where I guess it then becomes the town the show takes place in, and just kind of left aimless and feeling purposeless because his purpose was to just do what his master told him to. I sort of see how he then becomes bitter, how he becomes angry, how he becomes cold and gains that desire to hurt others. And I think it is a really strong moment when you see Udius's ability to cry as he's experiencing what Quietel is experiencing. Also, I like that Quietel can cry. It looks like by the end of the episode, he's still going to be the bad guy, but this is a complex villain who has an interesting emotional state that actually kind of makes you want to see more out of him. But yeah, so Udius then sees what's going on there. We, of course, have sort of the overly complicated mind battle of who overly predicted who to get there, but it's whatever. And then we move on to our final turn as Yuhi defeats Quietel, and Quietel's all just kind of standing there crying. I like the discussion about him sealing away his heart. That's a very generic sort of thing in anime, but I feel like the sort of directness of Yu-Gi-Oh allows it to work, especially after building this guy up as being a threat and seeing how people are then able to respond to it. In the Card Fight Vanguard videos, I talk about how I hate that the bad guys can't be bad guys, but that doesn't mean that villains shouldn't have understandable motivations or sympathetic moments or moments where you relate to them. You just have to then know when to bring it back to them being a threat, and I think this is kind of an effective way to do it. And then, of course, we end on the note of Udius naturally needs to come back because he's the main character of the show, but he's stuck in Quietel. And, oh, that sounded gay. And then Epoch shows up. Epoch then jumps on to Quietel, which causes some sort of weird energy reaction, which breaks away Epoch's box, thus revealing she looks like every other generic long black-haired anime lolly girl, but whatever. And she then proceeds to start crying as Udius is then returned. She's got to return to being a tsundere, but okay. And then the episode ends with Yuhi being crowned Galaxy Cup champion and getting his prizes, and there's fireworks and a celebration. Everything's fine, but not, because then at the end of the episode, we see Quietel in the relic or whatever it's called. He smiles, and I guess we find out the card Yuhi used in this episode was a card of darkness, so now he's possessed, but the card didn't say anything to indicate it was a... Who cares? It's cool. I love the way the music slows down and becomes sort of creepy. It almost sounds like kitty sort of creepy toy music, like Yuhi is now this guy's puppet. And God, I hope next week builds on this. Don't be bad, Phil, or shut up, train. I really hope this is good. and I really enjoyed this, and I hope you did too. In the comment section below, give me your thoughts on this episode, and if you're excited for where things are going. And as for the triumphant return of it being an actual TCG question of the week, let's talk about the one thing that matters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, baby. Duel Links. This Friday, we finally get to legally rush duel in this hemisphere. Seven's World hits Duel Links this Friday, and I'm hyped. I've wanted to rush duel since Sevens came out, and I kind of had a feeling this is how we'd get it. So my question to you is, will you give this a try? Do you even care about Duel Links? Are you willing to re-download it just to try this out? I actually was off Duel Links for a long time. Kind of just got back into it a while back, just as like something to do on my phone. And I kind of really enjoy it, and they give you a lot of gems and a lot of tickets for trying to get back into it and to get some fun stuff. The annoyance of it being kind of like a gacha game does then naturally pick up fairly shortly after, but I do enjoy Duel Links, and it's kind of fun to get to play as your favorite anime characters, and I'm really looking forward to playing as my boy Yuga. But give me your thoughts about that below, and as always, click to like, click to subscribe, and join me next week or maybe not, it depends on if it's good. Please be good.